Okay, let's roll. Awesome. Thanks everyone for joining. Today, I'm super excited to chat about the new fun world of Andromeda, which is the new Facebook algorithm. Uh, as marketers, any new algorithm brings a lot of just confusion, anxiety, especially right before PFCM period. And so my goal here is, as someone who spent a lot of time at Meta, to try to help marketers navigate and understand what's going on here, and hopefully you leave with some tips that can get you a better handle on how to really win in this new world. My hope is we can do roughly 15 to 20 minutes of the slides and then leave up to like 10 15 minutes in addition for questions. But success here would be like, for me to have a more collaborative session. So please feel free to ask questions. If something's not obvious, that would be great, versus me kind of running through the slides. That would be a little bit boring. Cool. So, really, Andromeda is era of like hyper personalized ads. This is something everyone has spoken about, but no one really knew how to kind of really execute or figure this out. And what's like super interesting is, with this algorithm, Facebook is actually pushing you to really go in this direction, but with limited guidance on how to get there. And so let's kind of jump in. So I'm sure everyone has seen Twitter posts and Facebook posts and LinkedIn posts from experts who talk about, okay, cool, like let's do the most obvious thing of just like improving creative diversity, test more, ship out more volume of creatives, um, and that should solve your problem. Um, Ironically, that is just the tip of the iceberg. That would probably cover a small portion of the victory, but you are really missing a big chunk here. And this is my hope, that we can discuss some of the other tactics that can really uncover a lot more value here. Cool. So before that, right? What's been the impact, and why is this even important to think about? Let's say if you were not to react on Andromeda. So you can see from some of these charts that we've pulled out, the CTRs have been dropping very, very rapidly. Some of the CPM trends have been like going up historically, and now there's been a general spike. What both of these indicate is your winners that were winning are going to fatigue much faster now, for not very obvious reasons. And the second is, if you were investing X amount of money in testing, the cost of now creative testing will significantly go up. And finally, most importantly, to play in this new ecosystem, the cost structures are different now. What I mean by that is your creative production teams that have introduced AI and have introduced, a lot more modern techniques can actually win in this new world, compared to some of the old tactics, right? And so it's really important to understand kind of the market dynamics here, to not be left kind of behind. But before we kind of get into the algorithm, let's try to spend some time to really understand the meta ad delivery system from a engineering perspective, because I think like once you understand the delivery system, algorithm becomes obvious. Versus, if you're missing that information, then you can have a lot of guesswork around what the algorithm is. It feels confusing, or you can have random guesses, but it's not a very first principle way of thinking about it. So my hope is we can jump some into it. So this is a very foundational view. Let's just say this is a 10,000-foot view of really what the life of a meta ad looks like. And I love these kind of charts because, you know, let's just say that every advertiser is really spending time on this box, right? That's your world. You're like going in Facebook Ads Manager, you're creating the ad, and you're like, we are good, right? But there is an entire journey, and these are like thousands and thousands of engineers and product people that are actually building a lot of the systems that finally get your ads into the newsfeed or into the hands of these users. And there's a lot of complexity there. And so I'll try to break these apart into some simple steps here. The most important thing to realize is, you know if you think about it from the reverse end, right? I'm a user. I'm on an iOS device. I'm scrolling my Facebook newsfeed. One out of every three posts can be an ad. And you know, as soon as I come on the phone and I try to query the Facebook app, my journey starts where I go and ask for content on my newsfeed, and my newsfeed figures out a bunch of friends and family and creator and all these posts, but then it also figures out ads. So this is a very like high level view of what that ad world looks like. So the key piece here is, from the newsfeed, the system needs to retrieve ads in sub 500 milliseconds. And this is important to understand because this is a really, really small window to pick ads from. And what that inevitably means is your systems cannot be complex. They need to be really, really fast, and they need to be effective. Because if you can find the right ads in this shorter time, then Facebook as a ad platform will not work, right? If I have very abstractly millions and millions of ads and I give you a very short time frame to figure out what are the best ads to show to me, that's a really, really hard problem. That is what a lot of the ad systems do. And so let's kind of walk through what that looks like. So let's say if you're an advertiser, you create an ad, ads go into what is called as an ads DB. It's just a simple database where your advertiser, your ad creative, your campaign details, just think about all the stuff that you write and you upload in ads manager goes into what's called an ad DB. This has millions and millions of ads at any given time. As you can imagine, hey, what if we just go to the database and just query it? That won't work because you just have a very short time window. And so then what Meta has done is built out sophisticated delivery pipelines, which do a lot of like indexing and ranking. And we'll go through each one of them. So ad publisher is the first step that actually takes some of these ads and starts publishing them. Publishing basically means you take these ads and you build what is called as indexes. Indexes are simple retrieval data structures. So instead of like building these like massive queries, they're very effective ways to pull data. And so stage one is what is called as an ad indexer. So think about 10 million ads simplistically from the database gets published and they get indexed in the ad indexer. Now, what's important to understand is ad indexer can index ads in many different ways. And this is the core of what has changed after Andromeda. So just imagine like before Andromeda, what the world looked like is you had indexes built on very basic targeting criteria, right? And typically the biggest features in here were age, gender, location. So what that means is two advertisers create an ad that had targeting set up for 30 to 40 male. Um, they would those two ads would get indexed under the same age bucket or gender or location, right? So just think about this, a very simplistic view of organizing these ads. And so then when a user with certain parameters and certain attributes comes and queries the system, the ad indexer in a very short time frame goes and matches it to say like, okay, Vinay is 30 to 40. So let's pick out very quickly 10,000 ads that could be possibly relevant for Vinay. And that's it, right? An ad indexer is like the one that scans through the most number of ads in the shortest period of time. And so these are the candidates of potential ads I could see. So you get 10,000 of these ads. After that comes the what is called as a ranking system, right? So now imagine on my newsfeed at any given time, I'm consuming 10 to 20 ads maximum within a few sessions. And so the job for the systems, ranking systems, are how do I take these 10,000 ads and then distill it down into like a few 10 ads, that could be very powerful for me, right? And this is the game to match business value and user value, which means, can I see the ads that the businesses have posted, which are relevant to me at the right time and with the right messaging? And if that match is great, then everyone's happy. Businesses get value. I'm happy with the right offer or the right product, and then the business obviously, and Meta is happy because they were able to deliver value. So then comes the ad ranking system. Typical features here are much more on the user level. So like, okay, for example, I get categorized into some bucket of users, and usually the attributes that are measured for me are like, how many ads have I commented on, or how many link clicks have I made, how much time do I spend on the in-app browser. And what they're trying to figure out is like, hey, for this new ad, let's try to predict how many comments it can get, or does it have more propensity for link clicks? And if it is, then let's try to match Vinay for it, right? So these are very much like user level features. And then they try to do the match. After that comes kind of like the third, which is a very small model. And this is, again, the beauty of like just Meta kind of expanding a lot of platforms and what is called as placements. They had a small model for each of the placements. So newsfeed, IG Reels, marketplaces, Messenger, these models would really hyper optimize for these placements and then get those ads down to 100. And amazing. After those 100 ads, they would be basically cached on your phone, because you can imagine like 2 billion people, a large portion of them are like, daily users. If they come and query every single time, the systems cannot function. So Meta has caching built out for period of time, and it obviously the times are reducing now, but they don't just query every time. So imagine from these 100, finally these come into your newsfeed, and you get selected to show the right ad at the right time. So this is what the previous world looked like. So now kind of just zooming in a bit with a very real example of what that world looked like before Andromeda. So let's focus on ad indexer. So this is where I mentioned there are very high level targeting based features. This is what I call as like classical rule based ML models were built. You would see here that, let's say there are 5 ads, right? So add 1 to 5 at a very simplistic level. And ad 5 is actually like a dog video. And let's say, I come in, I'm like a 33 male, California. I'm interested in, food blogs and dog videos. If I were to query the Andromeda system, before, and, let's say I was searching for a bunch of ads, what the system would do here is it would find ads 1, 2, 3, because again, I'm male. Again, ad 1 because I'm California, and then ad 4, right? So it would find ad 1, 2, 3, 4 as potential candidates. What it has missed out is a very core part of, it did not understand the creative of the ad generated here, which was a dog video, and that would have been ideal for me. But that gets missed because that's just not indexed at the ad indexer level, right? And so what this basically tells us is 2 things. Creative level features were never part of ad indexer for efficiency, and the models were just not there. And then second, 2 would be pulling in ads at a very high level of like features targeting, which automatically means your odds of success to show me the right ads are going to be low, because there'll be so many other advertisers that are just doing the same, age bracket and for the same gender and for the same state. It becomes very hard for Facebook to predict like which ad they should show me. Versus if it would get very specific, then there's a very high chance of it matching the exact ad that I would like at the right time. And so this is exactly what happens now. Again, this is a very simplistic view for practical purposes to kind of distill it down, which is, imagine if I was now querying a chat GPT and I said, okay, I'm Vinay, I like dog videos. From all the ads that you have, can you go and recommend me a few ads? And now what basically the ad indexer system has done, it has built what is called as a transformer based model, right? Which is exactly the architecture that a lot of the foundational models have been using. And so now what you see here is very detailed features that are not just based on targeting are actually used in indexers. So now they could actually figure out like, okay, cool, this is a dog video. And so Vinay has a bunch of features. So let's figure out all the dog videos and all the other interests that Vinay might have, and make sure that the creators that actually talk about those can be pulled as potential candidates. So this would ensure that your dog video gets picked up, and your odds of finding that right ad as an advertiser, matching it to the right user, are exponentially higher than what they could be. So I like to think this is a really big deal because we've moved away from what's broad, like what's called as basically like interest-based targeting, the way to match users, into now creative that has targeting built out. And this is what unlocks personalized ads on Meta. There's a lot of commentary around this, but I found a few things interesting. Like one is now, as you can imagine, personalized ads are a big thing in B2B in general, and ABM is a classic way. And so now a lot of B2B marketers, by no surprise, are really acing it on Meta because now they can apply the same sort of personalized ABM style tactics on Meta. And so this is a great example of someone who's able to kind of utilize it. But again, this is something that B2B marketers are very good at, but who are not generally good at it are, generally the e-commerce folks. And that's where I think there's a lot of opportunity to kind of go deeper here. I wanted to show you a live example of something similar we did for our own product that has absolutely broken out. So very simply put, we knew that a lot of our users are using Canva as an alternate product. And we said, look, if we want to go and target unhappy Canva users, what would that look like? And we created a ad just focused on that. And actually this ad broke out. And if you look at it was complete broad targeting, but it was absolutely focused from a creative standpoint to find Canva users. And so this ad itself, as you can imagine, was a breakout winner for us. We've been, getting a lot of like great leads from this and a lot of users because this just talks to the Canva user in a very, very rich manner. This would not be possible with just targeting criterias, for example. I'll just skip these details, but why would you care about our advice? Who are we? We are a badge partner, venture-backed startup. We've built a bunch of billion-dollar products at Meta. So we kind of have a good idea of what the world inside Meta looks like, and we've been working with a lot of marketers now as we're building Notch. So now let's get into how could you as a marketer utilize this new era of personalized ads, and what are some very tactical day-to-day tips that you could apply in the next, call it 1 week, and benefit from it. So number one starts from developing high quality personas. So as a marketer, you'll have a lot of first party data, reviews, purchase data, email list, customer recordings, customer interviews, surveys. Like, try to process them through some LLMs or some other systems and really get hyper specific on the potential personas that could exist. So in our case, for example, we found out from our customer calls that the SEO agency owner persona is a very strong fit for us, right? How did we find out? Just customer call recordings put in. And we said, okay, cool, this is great. So now we can make ads that talk to this specific persona, not through the targeting, but actually through the creative. So just a very simple thing that anyone could kind of focus on, directly. This one is I think the more obvious and the more like, as the tip of the iceberg goes, which is choose the latest trends, right? Figure out like what are the latest trends to really box and make sure that now in this new world of like, Andromeda, how can you make sure that you're finding the latest trend to capture and build these creatives? So there are a bunch of tools. There's obviously Facebook ads library. Just keeping your pulse on what's the latest trend will help you a lot as you kind of like develop these creatives. And this is, something interesting. So for example, you can see here, like, let's say a very broad targeting in the past could have been, women 18 to 25, pursuing further education. Our systems could actually build persona specific concepts. And so in this example, you can see we could build a creative that would say, okay, women aiming for a career in nursing, or women aiming for vocational training in interior design, or women aiming for a career in cosmetology. Like, this is the same audience broadly, but it's actually going very specific on the persona. And so these kind of are a great example of like where persona specific creatives could work well. So I would highly encourage everyone to kind of do that for your creatives. Again, this is just common stuff, which is try to use CBO campaign with broad targeting. What that means is try not to fragment your campaigns too much. Try not to like get specific on targeting. Try to keep it broad and let Meta do the exploration for you. And campaign-based budgets usually work in today's world as well. This is kind of important. Uh, Meta is notorious to show your ads back to the same users. And so a very simple tactic could be set exclusions to make sure you get new users. Meta is great for top of funnel. That's where you'll make most of the money. Um, and so setting up exclusions is important. Otherwise, you're not really going to figure out like if it's actually new users coming through the system or not. So again, in this new world, I would just highly encourage you to kind of like do that as you're doing broad targeting, because you don't know who's going to come. So you just should like really need to make sure that you're putting some safeguard there. This one is the most contentious and I think worth spending time on, which is stop wasting dollars on multivariate A/B testing. The world has changed. What I mean by that is the world of like same creative, one headline change, same creative, one background change is not going to work anymore. And the one fundamental reason is for Facebook, these two ads look the same now in the new architecture that I described. And so you are not going to get differentiated delivery. Facebook's like, yeah, this is cool. We'll just continue serving this one ad. So you're not going to get delivery in the new architecture between these two. And so what I would encourage people who are focused on A/B testing is to think a bit more deeply about what the two concepts that you're testing. Try to build a bunch of variations based on each persona and actually visually differ it, just distinguish them. So for example, it could be the same sort of product or same concept you're trying, but they're very different in terms of how they manifest. So different style, different messaging are the ways in which you can actually test concepts now versus this old style. GCs are absolutely a great format to double down on in the new world. And let me explain why. One of the core reasons, which is probably not communicated as explicitly for the reason to move into the creative as targeting, is because of what TikTok did. TikTok was successfully able to do what is called as unconnected distribution, which meant like, I don't need to be connected to a friend. I don't need to like a business. TikTok will figure out what post or what videos to show me. And Meta wants to get there. And so the reason I'm saying this is because Meta is heavily, heavily investing in UGC style surfaces, like obviously Reels. And so I would lean a lot on UGC as a format. And this also gives you the ability to test a lot more based on persona. So for example, you could change the avatar based on a persona, or for example, you could change the script. And you could test a lot here now today with the latest AI avatars. And what this can enable is a lot of good testing before you get like real influencers to kind of produce them, right? So highly encourage you to use this when you want to get specific on like persona based testing. Meta now actually has a lot more capability to process user level data in what is called as user journeys. So you can now get in and push a lot of data that are outside just the landing page pixel. That could mean, what do they do after that? What are the post-purchase behaviors? Attribution software is great for this. Piping all that data back through CAPI is actually today's world, because pixels, as you know, after iOS 10 upgrade, has like iOS 14 has really not worked out, right? And so leaning less on pixels and actually more on CAPI API will help Meta figure out the user better. This is a fun one. Meta has launched a bunch of metrics to help you with this transition into the new world. These are called creative similarity metrics. What they want to avoid is you follow the same pattern of similar creatives or A/B testing, like minor changes, and they are not getting distributions or your performance is tanking. They are helping you with that. So a few metrics to check. One is, there is like a creative similarity scorecard now they've shown up. So they'll really try to group these and explain like where your creatives are themed, what kind of categories they are in. Try to maximize that. It has also tried to now share what is called as creative fatigue. So you can understand that if your diversity is low and you're not injecting new creatives and your creatives are fatiguing, it's time to really quickly react on them. So checking them regularly will be very helpful. And this is, I think, the more foundational one, which is one example of what your creative testing setup on a weekly basis could look like is the following. Every Monday, you would generate new concepts. You can generate, let's say, ideally 20 concepts every week and choose 12 of them. 10 of them could come from your past winners, right? You could say, what were the winners? And now how do I build variations from them um, that are different, but going after the kind of the same persona? Or could come up with 10 new concepts from new trends that you've observed in the past. Now take these 20, rank them based on some signals, and then develop these creatives. And the way you could do that is by diversifying it a bit. So you could choose a structured like 3 different formats, 2 different personas, 2 different hooks, and this gets you like very good 12 creatives, like 12 concepts. Um, and you could launch them, measure the performance, figure out which of these actually won in a week, which of them lost, and the winners you can double down on, right? Like this is your engine today to win in this new world. What you can do is just like let creatives run for like months and expect, your ROAS to go up. It'll probably be fatiguing very, very quickly. And so the machine really needs a high volume of testing and creatives now. Um, Now comes the question of like one important metric in today's world now that's going to be very relevant is win rate, right? If you launch, let's say, the 12 concepts a week, how do you figure out which one has won and which one do you double down on? So I recommend coming up with a very clear definition of a winning ad based on your business metrics. So you could say, I want an ad to cross a certain threshold for my business to show that it has signs of life after running for a certain time. And you can have some gray areas there where you're not sure. But aiming for a 20% win rate is now very important, right? What I mean by that is 1 out of your 5 ads needs to be a winner, and really making sure that you as a performance marketer is getting the engine of creatives that hit that number is going to be paramount for you to continue sustaining performance. So now comes a question. This is a lot. So how can you do this yourself, right? So a bunch of options here. One is you could definitely work with an AI forward agency. So there are many agencies who are extremely, extremely good with understanding the algorithms, have a creative production engine built out, have trends locked in, know your brand. Great. They would roughly charge like 10K retainers. Um, One thing worth recognizing is their win rates is something you should measure. I've seen their win rates be sub 10%. So I would really try to make sure you can benchmark agencies against win rate and have some goals set up for them. The second one is usually around what is called as a Gen AI associate. So you could bring in a engineer or a Gen AI marketer that can stitch these pipelines that I just described using N8N, where it looks at your first party data, comes up with prompts for personas, comes up with creatives. An average cost for someone like this would be like a 5 to 7.5K. Again, great option, builds defensibility, but you'll have to maintain the software and do that. Again, possible. Or you could look at products like ours and a bunch of other like Creatify in the market that basically are solving this problem end to end. And then they just remove the headache of dealing with like AI models and the new algorithms. And typically our win rates are usually 2-3x higher than what a human would in terms of just guessing what the concept should be, because we use a lot of AI agents under the hood. Cool. So yeah, I think that's about it for the update on Andromeda and some of the problems. So with that, I'll kind of open it up for questions, thoughts, reactions.
Yeah, Vinay, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
That was awesome. Thank you. Very consistent with what you've been sharing over the last, 6-8 weeks on LinkedIn. First question, I got a couple questions.
Yes.
Does Andromeda affect ecom and lead gen equally, would you say? Or is it more going to have more impact on ecom? Just curious what your thoughts are on that, because you got both type of clients, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Mikrobi, that's a very good question. I think from a systems perspective, right, if you just look at how the models are built out, there is no distinguishing factor between verticals, right? It's just like the same ads DB has lead gen objective, the same ads DB has sales. A lot of the distinguishing factors are the ad formats that kind of live here, right?
Are you? Sorry, I was just gonna say. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
No.
From what you're seeing across, e-com clients versus lead gen, is Andromeda having more of an impact?
Yeah.
On one versus the other. Sure, the systems are the platforms, whatever Andromeda is a platform algorithm is built differently for those two types of businesses. But are you seeing the impact more on one versus another?
Makes sense. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Yeah. So just to kind of recap, right? Like I think the algorithm doesn't distinguish, but from a market dynamics perspective, I do think e-com is impacted a lot more. Simply because there's seasonality, right? It's just like massive amounts of just competition. This is like peak, peak time for e-com. So that's one. I think the second piece around it is also how the feedback loops for e-com work versus lead gen. So lead gen in general has a much longer time on the feedback loops, and they actually give much richer data if you think about it, right? Historically, because again, they're like pixels are not just like one-time purchase. They usually have CAPI API set up, which always helps with better relevancy of ads. With ecom, unfortunately, a lot of them have just like one-click pixel, one-day journeys, which heavily impacts the new world. So that's, I think, like a big part of it. And the third one I will say is like this ecom is just heavily indexed on video, much higher than lead gen that we've discussed. And so by design, you are again just like entering a placement option that is extremely more competitive. And so any algorithm changes are much more noticeable there. Versus lead gen is still, much more on the text, photo, carousel, like those formats.
Makes sense. Thanks. I really just was curious to get your perspective from where you sit. You have such a good perspective on both sides.
Yeah.
And just really quick you kind of already answered this, but on the development, of creative and finding what you've called motivators or creative directions, I guess, right? And then mapping those to motivators.
Yeah.
In developing creative directions, is it better? And let's say you're starting a brand new ad set. Is it better to go 5 creative directions and 1 ad for each, or one creative direction and 5 versions of that?
Yeah. Okay. So that's a great question, actually. No, I think today's world, you should have 1:1. What I mean by that is one persona and one creative that is exactly talking to that persona. Because what can happen now is for that one person, you can have like minor variations. They will be classified as the same creative. So you're better off utilizing your resources to maximize your chances with that one creative. Because what the systems are now going to tell you is like, look, if that one creative didn't work for that persona, it is very unlikely that minor 4 other variations are going to work out. Because there's just fundamentally, they were not able to connect or communicate the message, or they couldn't find the right persona that you intended it to be. And so really thinking about like personas and maximizing your chances with the creatives for them, you could vary the formats, obviously, would be my recommendation. So if you have 5, let's say, options, I would not lean into minor variations. You could do like, as I mentioned, like you could do reels, you could do, static ad, and you could swing harder in terms of the variations, but like minor 5 variations, I wouldn't try.
Absolutely. No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean one persona, multiple creatives that are simply iterations of each other. I think what you're saying is one persona mapped to different creative directions. Would that be fair?
Yeah, exactly. So like, for example, in this, in this workflow that I was talking about, you could take a concept that basically ties in, and you could vary it in different ways with like a format. It could be a hook. And so, yeah, those are different creative directions. Absolutely. So not variations, but different creative directions.
Yeah, got it.
There could be different ways you're talking to the same person. Like the Canva ad that I showed, we really use like that Google search to communicate, but you could totally just show like Canva tool and something not working or templates not working, right? And those would be great shots because they're again trying to communicate to that Canva user. What probably I wouldn't recommend is the Google search changing to like, I don't know, Perplexity or ChatGPT. Like that's just too, maybe that's still slightly diverse, but yeah, like nothing close enough.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Good question. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Great answer.
Cool. Anyone else? Any thoughts? Does this make sense? Any thoughts? Okay. If no questions, then I'm happy to kind of wrap things up. I'll share the recordings, the slide, and yeah, one final question before I kind of like peel off, which is what kind of topics would be helpful? One of the things we are exploring is like doing more webinars. So just curious about everyone's feedback on that.
I'll say something on that.
Yes.
Having been a Notch client in the past, different company. I started my own company and will be a Notch client again. I would absolutely 1000% recommend using Notch. One thing that, and one of the biggest reasons, and when I was using them, it was very, but anyway, was I one of your first clients?
Yeah, you were early backer for sure. Like you
Yeah.
really helped shape the thinking around it as well. Yeah.
Well, I only mention that because how far you've come since then. I don't even know if it was maybe 18 months ago, 16 months ago, something like that.
Yeah.
How far you've come. I wouldn't even recommend to anyone using Notch to use Notch because of how far you've come. The greatest value that I got, again going back 16 months, and the greatest value I saw with working with you guys was your kind of firsthand knowledge of Meta. That to me is such a separator. And that's why I can't, when I, am ready, when we get out of beta, that I'm ready to start working with you guys again. You guys know the machine so well, having been on the inside and somehow keeping tabs on that. That as much as there's two major challenges working with platforms, whatever they are, TikTok, YouTube, it doesn't matter. Meta. One's the creative, which you guys are solving that and getting better at it every single day with AI. And I've experienced that. You crushed our ad sets. And again, that was a year ago. Never mind what you've built now. But the other is your understanding how the machine works. And those are the two things that are massive, right? Creative and understanding how the machine works, how the platform works. And I don't think anyone does it better than you guys do. And that's what I would love to see more on the next webinar, is maybe going deeper on, if that makes sense, if there's a way for you to kind of demystify down to the, how Notch works with your Facebook manager, how it works, how ad sets are set up, how you guys handle all the things that can kind of trip up it definitely tripped us up right in the beginning. That I think other advertisers would appreciate, seeing how well you guys handle all that. I think that's important, and I think it gets kind of left behind because you guys are so good at it, and you're focused on building the creative side, right, of the ledger. But the other side of the ledger is how well how well you work the machine.
Yeah, thank you for the great words and thank you for the early support. Yeah, I think like the machine is complex. I won't lie. I think it's complex, and unfortunately, even though SMBs and a lot of businesses that make 80% of the revenue lose the most amount of money because it's like a very complex machine. So yeah, I'm happy to talk a lot more about like a lot of the small knobs which make a huge difference on the media management side. And part of our kind of like goal or roadmap now in the next quarter is to take this machine of creative, but then actually run it for you. Because I think there's just like so much that technology and reasoning systems can do now, which they couldn't. That's just great now. So that's also like just something that on our product side is coming up. So yeah, but I'm happy to talk about all the key ways in which you can do media management and just keep that workflow in a good spot. Apart from like creative testing, actually managing the money and making sure you're on top of those. So I'm happy to actually do that. That's a very good topic.
Yeah, I think that would be to hear you talk in depth about how it actually works, because I've seen it firsthand and it's really cool, but I've only kind of seen it macro. To get into some of the micro, how it works, I think that would be super cool.
Awesome. Yeah, great topic. I'll definitely take notes, and I'm like definitely try to set that up. Cool. Awesome. Any other final thoughts, questions?
Will you post the recording of this on LinkedIn or?
Yes, I'll share the recording. I'll share the slides. If this was great, just sharing it out to others would be great. Again, this is less about the product. It's mostly like I would love for people to just understand what's going on behind the scenes and make their own kind of judgments or workflows to work around this would be success for us. Okay, cool. Thanks for carving out precious 45 minutes from a busy Thursday lunchtime. So appreciate it, and thanks for all your support.
Awesome, Vinay. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
See ya.